Hello everyone, it's your favorite realtor, Erica Hernandez with Houston Top Realty. Happy October to you guys. I'm starting to really love October. The weather is really cooperating and I'm just getting super excited about Halloween. So I continued to dig through some of my old costumes and I found this referee and I thought this is the perfect opportunity to wear it and make a video about how realtors are like referees. If you'd like to hear more, please stay tuned. Don't forget to follow me on all my social media at Erica Houston Realtor, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and TikTok. And go to my website at www.ericahoustonrealtor.com. Guys, so on today's video, I want to share how realtors are like referees. Number one, we'll talk about how we're referees for sellers. Number two, we'll talk about how we're referees for buyers. And number three, how we're referees with other agents. Okay, so first of all, I did look up what a referee does. And really what they do is that they're a neutral party in different types of sport events, as we all know. The key thing here is that it is a neutral person who is neutral to the decisions that are made in any type of sport. One of the biggest reasons why there are realtors is because we are the neutral party to the transactions. It is important not to get emotionally involved and remember that there is an actual legal contract in all these real estate transactions. So today I just wanted to explain how we are neutral to sellers, buyers, and realtors. All right guys, so number one, how do we play the role of a referee for sellers? Although we do represent you as a seller and we are on your team, we do have to play the neutral party to any transaction. Whenever there's a complication that arises between a seller and a buyer, it is our job to stay as neutral as possible. If, for example, a seller is very upset about something that's going on in the transaction, it is our job to communicate that frustration in a different level to that buyer's agent, and then that buyer's agent will also know what to say to their buyer. The two agents in the middle act as a neutral party. We are the ones who end up getting together and collaborating to make sure that there's a smooth transaction. Sometimes sellers do get very heated about things that happen in transactions, but it is our job to make sure to stay neutral and remind the sellers about the contract and the legal agreement involved to make sure that the transaction goes as smoothly as possible. In the event that there's something going on that is not right for our sellers, it is our job to call that out like a referee and say, hey, we're not doing that. That is not okay. You're not going to treat the seller like that. Of course, we have to make sure that we're right when we're responding to something that doesn't sound right. It is our job in the middle as the seller's realtor and the buyer's realtor to make sure that we express those frustrations, but we don't get too heated and overwhelmed and cause the whole transaction to fall apart. Because sellers don't do this every day, they may not understand some of the things that are going on and if they're normal things that happen or not normal and should not be allowed. Our job is to teach you, hey, these things are very normal. It's okay. Let's see what we can do to help everything be resolved. But in some cases, when there's something that doesn't sound right at all, it is our job as the professionals to make sure we take care of you and call out, like I said, that red card, that yellow card, hey, something is not right here. Moving on to number two of how we are referees for our buyers. Whenever someone is cornering our buyer clients to do certain things or agree to certain things, our job is to communicate with that other party and tell them, hey, I know I do this every day and that is not okay. You cannot make my client do that. Oftentimes, for example, when buyers go to new construction homes and they're not being represented, sometimes they do get cornered into signing agreements that they're not comfortable with or agreements that they really don't understand. Since we see these transactions time after time, we know what kind of delays can happen in new construction. We know what kind of things new construction builders try to get away with that they shouldn't. I always say when you go to new construction homes, make sure you're being represented. Your buyer representative most times is actually paid by the builder. You don't have to pay for a buyer representation. So I always say if you can have someone in your court defending you you and making sure to call out those things that are not right, choose to work with a realtor. Another way we are referees for our buyer clients is typically during the negotiation stage. A lot of times we know what we can negotiate depending on what cards are on the table from the seller or the situation. During the negotiation stage, we will call out those things that don't sound right or that we know we can get away with. For example, it's very possible that during the negotiation of repairs, we make a list for our buyer clients and turn it in to the seller's agent. That seller's agent may come back and say, well, my seller is very upset and they do not want to do any repairs. Before I communicate that back to my buyer client, I, as a professional, will sit there and try to brainstorm something that can be done and something that the seller might agree to before I go back with that rejection to my client. I'll talk more about the real estate agent referee situation in the next point, but I just want you to know that as your buyer's agent, if you are a home buyer, we are going to be defending you and being as neutral as possible, making sure that your emotions don't cross over to the sellers or the seller's agent. And of course, we do communicate your concerns, but in a different and a professional way, because we know what kind of wording works for negotiations. Oftentimes, buyers have the wrong negotiation strategies. We do this every day. We know what strategies work and which don't. One negotiation strategy that I see sometimes is when buyers try to say, well, I want you to tell that seller that if they don't do XYZ, I'm not going to buy this house and he can forget it, and all these other things. There's a better way to handle that. Oftentimes I'll ask my client, of XYZ, will you just share with me which things are most important? I want to make sure that whatever is truly most important, I do my best to negotiate that. So a lot of times it's a lot of just staying neutral, making sure that we're not going back to that seller's agent and saying exactly what the buyer said, but communicating that over to them in a very neutral way. Last on today's video is how we're referees with other agents. The most important thing to be able to play that part of referee is knowing what you're doing and having the experience. Make sure if you pick an agent, it's someone who knows what they're doing and has a lot of experience, because you can't have someone just making threats and they don't really understand how the contracts work and they don't really know what typically people can get away with in certain negotiations. Oftentimes I come across agents who maybe don't do real estate full time or don't have the experience. It is my job to say, wait a minute, what are you saying here? Because what you're saying is not correct. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying, because what you're saying is going to negatively affect my client, and I'm not sure what you're saying is correct. Sometimes when sellers get really upset at their agents, some agents don't know how to be professional. They'll translate that frustration exactly the way it's coming from their current client. And that's where I put a stop to that. I do not let that emotional frustration transfer any further. If it comes from the seller and goes to the seller's agent and comes to me as a buyer's agent, I immediately put a stop to it. First, I try to calm them down and make sure they remember that they are the professional in this transaction, and I get to the bottom of what the issue is so that I can take that back to my buyer clients. This is a skill that most people will sometimes never master. Some agents do practice this on the daily, but there are quite a few people that get very emotionally involved, and I usually remind them, you are the professional here. Do not let the emotions of your client get to you, and then you're taking it out on me when I have no fault that you got yelled at or whatever the case. Typically, when someone's at the point that they're yelling at you, you might have not set the expectations that that's not the way that people should be talking to each other. It's not really talked about, but I think the way that you present yourself and that you're not going to let someone just push you around and yell at you, then it will not happen. In very rare cases, it will slip. Sometimes it does happen to me and I really don't know why. I think it's just the person, but most times I show myself as a professional, as the expert, and I let people know that this is what I do for a living and I'm really good at communication, so there's no need to start yelling or getting crazy. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video about talking about how we're referees in real estate. If you enjoyed it, please give me a like and do not forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any other videos. All month of October, I'll be looking for other costumes that I have just laying around from previous years so that I can just make it a little bit fun this month. Like I told you guys earlier, if I'm not having fun, I'm not happy, and I love to be happy, so here I am in my costume. Let me know what your plans are. Are you dressing up for Halloween? Thank you so much for watching today. I can't wait to see you next week.